Hello everyone, welcome in. This is section 2.5, designing your own trendy and memorable character in Okku's Coloso class, how to design stylish and trendy characters for illustrations. So welcome in guys. First and foremost, I just want to say an apology for the delay. There's been a lot going on. I've had some mechanical issues with my car. I've been tossing up whether I want to keep my second job or not. The likelihood is probably not, so I can have more time to focus on not only my content here on my channel, but also preparing myself for UI and UX come spring. So between now and then, hopefully it'll be a good runway to establish my portfolio, get some content on my socials and on my channel for you guys, as well as finish these Coloso classes by then hopefully, and have a lot of good content to show for it. Remember that you guys can always keep on top of further classes and further content made by me by checking out my other socials, which I'll link at the end of this video, as well as just subscribing and keep on top of the notifications if that is something you wish to do. In any case, this is section 2.5. We'll dig right into the notes now. So Okku really starts by highlighting the design process that she sort of approaches, as well as some things to consider in each sort of step of the process. So first and foremost, there are two types of design that she goes over. The first is called intuitive design, and it's mainly used in casual/stylized games, and the ideas are fun and exaggerated to be intuitively fun. It shows occupation and or characteristics of the character first and foremost. The second process she mentions is artistic design, which is drawn in accordance with intention and is usually drawn in an artist style for eye-catching attention, so typically something that might be outsourced to a freelancer or commissioner if you're working inside of a group project, and it's seen in anime or subcultural styles. I think the examples she really lists for intuitive design are generally like chibi games or games that are very, very stylized in nature, are just meant to be fun. So I'll list some examples here on the screen. And then the artistic design she mainly mentions to be from Nier Automata. Really great example of artistic design. That was a character developed mainly to be eye-catching and alluring in character design first. So between these two design styles, intuitive design is better suited for portfolio work to display for a company because there's satisfaction in simplicity over extremely detailed characters. So for any sort of specialized work, but especially pertaining to working for a company in terms of character design, they really want to see mastery in a few subjects or just in the simplicity of things rather than mediocrity in a lot of different things. So if you can show that your character designing elements are very strong, even when simple, at worst, they can just have someone to outsource the details to later or have someone else on the team help compensate. But you really want to get that base down first, which is why satisfaction in simplicity and in intuitive design is going to be more beneficial for project work. And generally, it's best to try and mix the two when designing characters for a personal portfolio. Make sure you have elements of both that you're considering. Next, Okku kind of goes over the important elements in character design by order of importance to her, the first of which being silhouette, which some design elements will be harder to illustrate given the style, so it's important to study and understand effective means of translating design elements in their appropriate style. The best sort of example to this would be that maybe for like a mechanic archetype in the chibi style, the goggles take up like half the face size. But if you translate that closer and closer to realism, if you keep that same proportional size, it's going to look a little strange on a character with more realistic proportions if the goggles are still half the size of the face. So it's important to really scale down characteristic elements to the appropriate style where needed. In order to consider more intuitive elements of your character design, consider the silhouette the most when approaching that. And the outermost elements of a design affect the silhouette the most. So if you take the whole character and you shade it to black, the outer elements of the character are going to be what actually define the border of that character. So it's important that they illustrate the intention of the character first. When designing a character, it's best to show the characteristics with the figure of the silhouette because they define that silhouette in general. And the key elements in the character design should have an overlapping theme, so that way the elements that stand out in the silhouette have a general unity to them. Next is going to be color scheme, and for color scheme, lighter colors act as highlights to design elements. So adding contrasting values to color to have the ability to emphasize and highlight design elements is key. Make sure that you give yourself enough variety between your colors for them to essentially do the visual storytelling that you're aiming for with the silhouette. And then for colors, don't have a uniform ratio of colors to one another in order to use them effectively. That way you have a good mix of lights and darks as the lights act as a highlight to what you're trying to emphasize. And then generally design and assign colors during the draft stage because they act as a key backbone to your silhouette. So it's important that they're established first and then they can be refined later. And then last, you've got details and texture, where you use color and pattern to better illustrate the texture of characteristics and certain design elements. This might be similar to hair, clothes, etc., really showing the characteristics of the material that you're using the details on. And then something to note when assigning details to different design elements, the more design elements there actually are, the easier it's going to be to assign color and value to each one in order to have them stand out from one another because there's so many of them. Next, she kind of goes over the design steps that she takes when she's drafting a character. So the first is going to be considering the silhouette. So design what characteristics from the planning stage will be used and center them as your focus when you're drafting. Remember that the silhouette's going to tell the intention of the character visually, so deciding that first and foremost is really, really key when you're building up from the planning stage. And then zooming out can help the accuracy of intention designed in the silhouette. A good example of this that she showed in her lecture was that she was building a headpiece for one of her characters. And she showed the difference between soft and hard edges as you zoom out and the different types of impressions that you make. So remember that even further away, stronger design elements will still show themselves within the silhouette of the character, and zooming out can help you do that. Next is your relevant tools and weapons, and pretty much just work them in tandem with the outfit to help illustrate the intention of the character. Obviously, a mage is going to have a staff of some sort, maybe a book, a warrior, a sword, shield, etc. Something to help further push the intention of the character. And with that, next is going to be your outfit. And a really good tip is to use synonymous design elements to different themes to help illustrate your character's intention. A good example is royalty. With royalty comes large sleeves, crowns, gold, other elements that may create the inference of royalty. So really you want to be incorporating more of these elements into the design aspects of your character. And then last, you've got your detailed design, which relates to the inner details of the silhouette that have less of an impact to it, but they still should complement the intentions designed on the silhouette from the outside. And then just some general tips that she outlines in regards to these design steps. Trendiness and fantastical designs play a role in balancing artistic value with intentional design or visual storytelling. Good point that she mentions in her lecture is that on a knight character that she had, she removed the lower armor on the legs, so it really just showed a lot of legs and a lot of midriff of the character, which obviously looks really, really good and very alluring as a female character. However, it's not very practical. So it's important to really balance the intuitive design of the character, if they're a knight, that they have armor and weapons and the sort, versus making the character look appealing visually and narratively. Generally, it's better to draw a weapon and tool with the character than separate. So you'll see these in character design concepts. Like said, the weapon and tool will really help sell the intention of the character, so really try to lump it in with your character designs to start. And then study the trend to understand various types of like characters. That way you have a general basis of if you need to tune your character more intuitively or less intuitively and more artistically, you know what elements to focus on to really include or exclude in your character design. And then just a practical tip here. The lasso tool set to an inner glow and then using it to fill whatever you select can be used for efficiency in drawing inner details instead of the pencil/brush, because it essentially creates a layered look on top of what you're drawing. So that way you can layer on the details as you develop your character in the draft stage. Remember that impression and character traits take priority over the figure pose, which can be determined later. Just make sure you get the feel of the character down first and foremost. Your draft should be able to be defined by a couple keywords, as we talked about in the planning stage in a couple units back, and I think 2.1. So make sure you're including those design considerations into essentially keywords that can help define your drafts to be a little more accurate with their intention and visually telling the character. And then your details should come after the figure silhouette and general costume has been decided, as the figure silhouette and the general costume are going to be the backbone to the feel of your character. So a quick summary of everything we've gone over so far. Understand the order of priority and purpose for the design process. Establish your design approach and plan in order to create drafts in consideration to their purpose/intention, and focus on the impression of the character and the intention it tells visually first, then refine the silhouette with details later. And then the self-assigned homework that I thought was appropriate is to create 2 to 3 design drafts of characters using the design process outlined and summarized by first planning the character, finding references, and then creating the character around the visual intention shown. This is pretty much just what Okku did in her lecture for this class, which is super, super interesting. And if you are currently following along in the class, I would highly recommend you just sit and watch as she explains through her process, because it's very, very insightful and shows 3 different styles of characters, all with very similar considerations in their planning stage. So it's just a really good example of, even though you may have strong similarities or just straight up the same planning approach, how you choose to design your characters and what design aspects you include in them can really change the intention of your character and the visual narrative that they display. So that was section 2.5 of Okku's class. Really interesting stuff as we move into the next section, which is going to be planning the design based on character concepts, which is going to include a lot more professional experience offered by Okku in designing a character. So Really interesting stuff. Hope to see you guys in the next lecture with section 3.1. And then remember that you can always keep tabs onto updates or other content made by me by checking out my socials. I'll link them around the screen here for you to check out. And with that, you can always ask any questions and leave them in the comments or on any of my socials, and I'm more than happy to help answer where I can and help fill in any gaps that you guys might have in regards to either Coloso or the class material. Again, thank you so much for joining into this lecture review, and I hope to see you guys in the next one with section 3.1. As always, hope you guys have a good day and take it easy. Bye-bye now.